Welcome to Psychology to Live By, and today is a Q&A with some people who are very keen for their upcoming holiday. And our topic is actually how to have a holiday on your holiday. And in this second part of the series, we discuss strategies to implement your holiday on a holiday plan. Our diligent participants have watched the podcast, which you can see or listen to at my website, drchris.life. But now a quick summary before we have a discussion. In the first podcast of this series, we discussed how to plan so you can enjoy an actual holiday on your holiday. In the second, we discussed how you implement that plan. And I've compiled a list of the quite likely hurdles you will meet. And with each, I offer some suggested strategies to deal with them. The first and most important strategy is to talk to the relevant people. Enroll those close to you in your plan, your partner, the kids, your friends, whoever's relevant. You'll probably need to adjust your plan so it works for them as well. Their needs have to be accommodated, so start there. Next, you'll need to talk to those to whom you may be saying no. So the real challenge here is how to skillfully assert your needs, hopefully without destroying the relationship. You may well have to decline some invitations or limit how many guests you have or reduce the durations of visits, the duration of travel or events. All of this requires thought because you might, for example, be balancing your partner's needs to not rock the boat with their family or indeed with your own. So the first piece of advice that I would give to others, and I give this advice to myself, is to never say yes straight away. You want time and space to think before you commit yourself to other people's expectations. Another good idea is to practice saying no to requests that are more than you want. And in the podcast I talk about this, but you need to have a couple of ways to say no ready so you don't have to make them up in the moment. Some of these no's will be direct, some more gracious, and some will be no-ish, where you negotiate a compromise. Whatever, prepare them all in advance. And just to give a summary of what we do cover in the podcast, I give some tips on how to reduce the holiday workload by just really deliberately doing less, how to eat and drink less on the holidays, a common problem, how to reduce holiday financial pressures, and how to attend to any work demands that arise while you're on holidays. How do you actually go about doing the exercise, the meditation, the swimming, the book reading, etc., that you've planned? And how do you put up with that obnoxious uncle? And how do you connect with others on holiday breaks if you're lonely? And finally, how do you actually enjoy yourself and be more in the moment and have more fun? So you can see there's a lot in that podcast. But for now, let's talk to our incipient holiday makers and see what insights and questions they have. And here they are, the incipient holiday makers. I think I've got a feeling that you've got lots to say here, so I'll shut up. And what do you want to talk about?
Well, I think I don't necessarily have a question, but I think one of the big takeaways for me was like just giving yourself permission to decline, but without justification. So with that, like,
Yes.
thank you, I'm grateful for the invitation, but I regretfully have to decline. And then not immediately going into because of this, and this, and this, and this. So that I think is a practice for me, is just like, it's not going to work for me. Thank you. I'm grateful, and leave it at that without going into the justification.
Beautiful. And I might just say a few things about that because I think it's such an important, because I think what you're implying there, and this is true for me and for many people, is when we say no, we then hurriedly try to justify it and make explanations, and thereby we weaken the case, right? And we're also communicating to the other person that we're doing something wrong, like implicitly, because I've got to then just, you know what I mean? So I think the suggestion in the podcast was something like, say no and then shut up. You know, I think I said stay silent, but and it's the silence is very important. You let them fill the space, and let's say they say something like, "Oh, well, that's a shame." They've now accepted your no.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's disappointing. Yeah, it is.
yeah, yeah, and you know, as I said, if there's other ways of saying no, some will be direct like that. Others will be more, you've got an interest in protecting the relationship, you know, and, you know, so you might say, but something that I would like to do is, you know, come March, I've been thinking about we might catch up to do X, Y, Z. You know, but something that fits into your needs and wants, but also protects the relationship, right? But with others, you might just be happy to say no. You know, and a lot of this also depends a little bit on stage of life, because you know, when you're a certain age, it's okay to say no to certain things. We don't have to be celebrating all the time, or, you know, getting together and having, you know, there are age appropriate things, and I think that's also another reason you can, you know, successfully say no, right? And people will respect it. But yeah, that's a tricky one for a lot of people, Karen. It's really is quite tricky. So thank you for that. What else, guys?
So this these two podcasts back to back are such a great like 1-2 punch prep for the crash course prep for holidays. You know, I said it in the last Q&A, but it's all very relative to me. And one of the things in this podcast that really stuck out was just like, and riffing on what we talked about before, that idea of like setting that plan and bringing the people that are important to you into that plan, as a um, support system to help make sure you stick to it. And
Yeah,
I almost had an idea. So this is maybe more of an idea putting forward, like of actually how could we, you know, thinking about at my house, turn that into a family exercise where each of us individually lay
yeah,
out our plans and our lists of what's important for each of us in the holidays, and then we review it as a group and say, okay, these are the things that we want to make sure that we make time for and make space for.
yeah,
And that then does that give us that box, that criteria list to help us also maybe navigate the conversations that we say no to, because we say we've committed to doing some of these other things that are important to these other members of the family, so we have to decline this. Or maybe there's a more elegant way of saying it, but it gives us that a bit more framework around what we would say yes to and say no to. And perhaps, oh, I should say yes to this thing because it's important to my partner or to my kids. Might not be for me, but it's important to them. It's high on their list. So I understand where I'm compromising and where they're compromising, and maybe it puts us all on a level footing.
yeah. Look, there's so many good things about that suggestion. I'll see if I can remember as they were occurring to me, you know, but just to take that last piece, I really like that because very often what happens in holiday times is we say yes to things and then we resent it, right? And so we're going to events and we're already, you know, cranky, and we're looking to perceive the feared or unwanted activities or people or traits, and then of course we find them, and so we, you know, and then we have various coping strategies to deal with our resentment. For a lot of people that means drinking more alcohol or eating more food, you know, do you know what I mean? And Whereas with your plan is like you go, okay, my wife's happiness is very important to me. I can't stand her brother, but it's important to her that she maintains some relationship. Therefore, it's important to me that we go. So you're going there with a clarity of mind and an acceptance that this is a meaningful thing you're doing now, not something you're being forced to do, right? The other thing I really like about that idea is everyone in the family gets to feel like their main priorities are being met. Not all of their wishes, but their main priorities. And I think that's really important. And a third thing that I think is wonderful in this, and we might talk a little bit more about this, is the educative effect on your children. You know, so we were talking, I think in the last podcast about, you know, the way the whole culture is trying to just sell and inculcate, you know, high consumerism. And, you know, grandparents drowning our kids in lots of small gifts and so on. But the very context of this conversation is educating them about something else. Again, you know, one of my wife's favourite sayings is less is more. Like if we can inculcate that idea that having some space to really enjoy things, having fewer things that are more meaningful, that are actually, you know, much better that they get one decent present than 10 bits of crap. So having that conversation helps your kids. It starts to educate them around also about social relations and complexities and having to think outside self and having to compromise for others. You know, even though they might not be great at it, that it's that very modelling that enables them to do that later in life. Yeah, so I think it's a brilliant idea. It had one other little thought that occurred to me, and it occurred to me when I was writing this podcast and while you were talking. The plan has to have flex in it, and we don't want to become perfectionistic about it, right? That's why I think what we need to have in it is lots of space for the inevitable stuff that then comes in to fill some of it. But do you know what I'm saying? So, and we've got to fit in with other people. So it's not like I don't want to give the impression it's like turning holiday into work. But it's actually this way of not automatically falling into the patterns that our family or our culture wants us to fall into that don't serve our needs. Yeah.
And holiday feels like work often. So maybe doing a little work to start to set you up so that it doesn't feel like work the rest of the time might be time well spent.
Exactly. And I can't remember, I think it's in this podcast I talk about there'll be times when we slip into old habits but we can recommit to the plan the next day to say, what am I going to do next time that happens? But more positively, we can be congratulating ourselves, giving ourselves a pat in the back because we actually remembered to go out and lie in the hammock, you know, or on the lounge. It'd be a hammock in Australia because it's warm. It's probably not going to be a hammock in North America, but it'd be on the lounge, on the sofa. I think you call it. Is that correct? Yeah. But yeah, also you're kind of giving self-reinforcement to I'm allowed to rest today. I'm allowed to do very little. I'm allowed to read my book. And you know, with parents too, I think maybe part of the plan, you know, if they've got kids, is finding some time when the parents can just be by themselves. They can be together. You know, time where each individual can be by themselves, but time when the couple can be together, I think is usually a very important thing on holidays as well. All right. Who else?
Huh? That leaves me. So,
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah. So the three takeaways for me is I always feel 9 times out of 10 I need a holiday from the holiday. And it's
Yeah.
not just Christmas; it's friggin' summer holidays too.
Yes.
Two, if there's ever a time that I'm going to get sick, it's during the holiday.
Yes.
But the most important piece that I pulled from this, and Karen touched on it too, is the art of saying no and nothing else after.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the no doesn't mean no.
Mm.
You get defensive. And I've witnessed it inside my own family. They'll say no, and then there's behind the no is a 10-minute reason why that completely deflates the no. If they just said no,
Yeah.
maybe as you say in March or something, it all would have been done.
Mm.
Instead, it becomes a half an hour drama. And I
Exactly.
witness it. So
Yeah.
the art of saying no for the holidays is probably the most powerful thing from this podcast for me.
That's interesting, isn't it? And I spend quite a bit of time on that in the podcast, from memory, the direct no, as you were just describing, the gracious no, and I give some examples, like where we graciously thank people for the invitation, and and there's various ways of deflecting it. You can, I often use my wife as a reason I can't do things. My wife forbids me. I've promised my wife that I won't. And she knows I do this. And then sometimes though, Terry, we will want to say no-ish because it is important to us. But we don't want to say yes to the whole thing, but we do want to do something. But I know exactly what you're referring to there with the when people prevaricate, when they hesitate, and they start introducing all this extraneous stuff.
They just go down a rabbit hole, and it's brutal.
Yeah, and it feeds people's. It actually is seeding in the listener's mind reasons they should be upset.
Well, it actually usually causes the upset. The no didn't cause the upset.
Yes.
The supposed justification
exactly
then causes the friction point. And then it's a rabbit hole, and then it's bad, and then there's a whole other. Then before you know it, you got other in-laws calling, and it's a I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're talking about it next Christmas. They're bringing it up. It's just never ending.
Those sort of situations are memories like elephants. They're never forgotten.
That's right.
They're always brought up in the conversation the following year and the year after that.
Yeah. I mean,
we have similar families, Karen.
I think this is a universal phenomenon. But let me pick up on a couple of other things you said there, Terry. The thing about falling sick, and this is a well-known phenomenon, but the causes of it may be not so well known. When we're running on chronic stress, which a lot of us are when we're working, especially leading up to holidays and deadlines and so on, our fight-flight system, our sympathetic nervous system is overactivated, and one of the things that happens when the sympathetic nervous system is regnant, when it's in charge, it suppresses our digestion and it suppresses our immune system. Now, the reason it does that is both of those systems are extremely expensive from a biological metabolic point of view. That they take a lot of energy, right? And because the fight-flight system's operating at some level, our brain body thinks we're in danger and wants to conserve all energy for running and fighting, right? So what happens is, let's say, you actually have a virus in your system or bacteria in your system, but your immune system is relatively compromised because you're chronically stressed. It doesn't actually pick up that these things are in the body, and doesn't then, because after all, what an illness very often is our body's defense mechanisms against the invader. So all the symptoms of a cold, they're the body defending us after it's recognized the invader, right? So what happens, of course, is people go on their holiday. After a couple of days, their fight-flight system starts to switch off. Their immune system kicks in and goes, holy hell, right? And gives you the illness you should have had a month ago, right? So I think that understanding this is why I think I've said that we ought to, another reason to have the space is you probably should allow yourself to get sick for a week and not catastrophize about it, and have some sort of self-compassion around it and be patient. That this is actually in a way is a really good use of that time is so you can rest and get well as quickly as possible, right? Now, obviously, the ideal would be not to be so stressed leading up to the holidays, but I think that's probably another podcast. So that you don't have to get sick on your holiday. The other thing you mentioned, Terry, was needing a holiday after your holiday, like being more tired, as it were. And that speaks to the whole rationale for this series, that, we were, very conscious that we're coming up to the Christmas holiday period. I think there is quite separate to just this specific holiday. It's been quite a ride the last 3 or 4 years, with the COVID pandemic, with what's happening in the world, what's happening in American politics, which is affecting all the world, Ukraine, obviously more recently Israel, Hamas, climate change. I mean, there are many very large issues that are weighing upon people. And my anecdotal sense is that relative to the last 30 years, people are tired. They really need a break. And there can be a tendency to overindulge in the holidays because their systems are still running really fast, or they're just trying to, to deal with these emotions. So I thought it might be useful to talk explicitly about using the holidays actually for what they're designed for most people. Yes, to have some fun, do something exciting, maybe even climb a mountain, but bring our body back into balance and actually enjoy ourselves, relax, feel rejuvenated. And if you are a sample of the general population, I wasn't wrong in thinking that it's an important thing to discuss. And I'm really glad it resonated. I've got another podcast I want to write. I'll write it soon, which will follow from this. And that's going to be about how do we actually enjoy each day? That's a big topic. I don't know exactly what I'm going to say yet.
Sounds nice.
Why don't you ponder it over your holiday?
What's that?
Why don't you ponder it over your holiday?
No, I want to. Unfortunately, I want to write it before the holiday, so I'll so that people can have it, because I have a sense in which, but people do this plan and they implement it. There's still this sort of psychological capability of, can I actually relax? Can I actually enjoy it? And that's surprisingly difficult for most of us. So anyway, that's what I want to do next. All right, my friends, thank you so much. It's always a great pleasure, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.